One. Today I will be talking about how to develop Bangladesh, make it a hopefully a first world country, and I will collaborate with few other people, a podcast that I have listened recently, and I would like to basically share this podcast. So if you can listen, and then I will talk. I'm just starting the podcast.
Dig in. This time, we're tackling development strategies. Specifically, what does it take to really lift a nation up? Now, that's a big question. It is. But we're focusing on Bangladesh today. We found this really insightful document that lays out some key approaches, and, well, we just had to dive in. Bangladesh is a really interesting case study, actually. Lots of potential. That's what we thought, too. So you ready to get into it?
Bangladesh has
Do it. All right.
lots of potential.
The document really emphasizes economic development. That's like the base, the bedrock. Makes sense. You need a strong economy if you want to make progress on anything else, really. Exactly. And one of the first things they highlight is investing in infrastructure. The classic. Roads, bridges, railways, that kind of thing, right? Yeah,
Infrastructure.
all of that. They
Very
made this
important.
really interesting point, though. Think about it. Better transportation networks could help farmers in rural Bangladesh. Oh, I see. Get their produce to markets faster. Exactly. Less spoilage, more income. It could really boost their livelihood. And a stronger agricultural sector benefits the entire country, right? Totally. And on that note, another key factor is attracting something called FDI. FDI. Foreign direct investment. It's when companies from other countries invest in businesses in Bangladesh. Gotcha. And having a solid infrastructure in place makes a country way more attractive to those investors. Exactly. It shows you're serious about growth. Oh. And reliable energy is super important too, the document says. Right, because who wants to set up shop if the power's always going out? Makes sense. Okay, now, moving on to another big idea. Diversification. The document points out that Bangladesh relies a lot on its garment industry. Yeah, they're a major global supplier of clothing, right? Exactly. But putting all your eggs in one basket, or, all your clothes in one factory, can be risky. For sure. So what are some other sectors where Bangladesh could really shine? What does the document suggest? Well, two areas come to mind. Agriculture, actually, and then, this is interesting, services. Services, like what kind? Think tech. Bangladesh actually has a burgeoning tech sector. Wow, I didn't know that. See, this is why I love these deep dives. Always learning something new. Right. It's fascinating, but to really make the most of these opportunities, you need a skilled workforce. Absolutely. Can't have a booming tech sector without people who know how to code. Precisely. That's why the document stresses education and supporting small businesses. It's about empowering people to drive the economy forward. I like that. It's not just about attracting big companies. It's about cultivating talent from within. Okay, ready to shift gears a bit. We've talked about the economic side, but none of it really works without good governance. It's like building a house on sand, right? If the foundations aren't strong, the whole thing collapses. The document actually calls this the tricky part, and for good reason. I bet. Where do you even start? Well, they highlight corruption as a major obstacle. Yeah, corruption can really hinder development. It's like a disease. They actually cite a pretty shocking statistic in here. Corruption costs Bangladesh an estimated 2 to 3% of its GDP every year. Wow. That's huge. That's money that could be going towards, well, anything else, really. Right. Education, healthcare, infrastructure. It's a huge loss. So what's the solution? How do you even begin to tackle something like that? That's the million-dollar question. The document talks about transparency, accountability, and a strong judicial system as key factors. Okay, so basically, making sure the government is clean, accountable to its people, and that the legal system is fair and effective. Exactly. When people trust the system, they're more likely to invest and participate in the economy. It creates a more stable environment overall. And that sense of stability is essential for attracting foreign investment, too. It all ties together. It really does. And a strong legal system isn't just about economics either. It underpins social development as well. True. It ensures people's rights are protected and that everyone has equal access to justice. And speaking of social development, we can't forget about sustainability. The document does a great job of weaving these ideas together. They're not separate issues, that's for sure. You can't have one without the other. Right. Investing in healthcare and education, for example, pays off in so many ways. Absolutely. A healthier, more educated population is more productive. They can contribute more to society. And they're more likely to innovate and come up with solutions to challenges like climate change. Which, by the way, is a huge concern for Bangladesh. It is. They're one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, actually. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events. It's a real threat. So, what does this document suggest in terms of dealing with that, especially given how vulnerable Bangladesh is? Well, it talks about both mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation, meaning reducing emissions to try and slow down climate change itself, and adaptation, meaning preparing for the changes that are already happening. You got it. For Bangladesh, adaptation is particularly crucial. The document mentions things like building cyclone shelters, developing early warning systems. Practical steps they can take to protect their people from the impacts of climate change. Exactly. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is international cooperation. Because no country is an island. Definitely not. We're all interconnected. Right. And the document really emphasizes this. They talk about the importance of trade agreements, for example. Free and fair trade can be incredibly beneficial for developing countries. It opens up new markets for their products. And Bangladesh has actually benefited quite a bit from trade agreements. It's helped boost their garment exports. Which, of course, is their biggest industry right now, so that makes sense. The document also highlights regional cooperation as super important. Regional cooperation, so working together with their neighbors. Why is that particularly important for Bangladesh? Well, they share borders and resources with other countries in the region, so things like cross-border trade, water management. Oh, I see. Issues that impact the entire region, not just Bangladesh on its own. Exactly. It's about tackling those challenges together. They even mentioned disaster preparedness, which makes a lot of sense given the risk of cyclones and floods in the region. It's like a we're in this together approach. Pretty much. So that's a lot to unpack, right? It is. We've covered a lot of ground. Developing a nation is no easy feat. It's complex. But looking at Bangladesh, it's clear that with strategic investment, good governance, empowering people, and working with the global community, there's a lot of potential for positive change. It's about having a plan, and this document really lays one out. It does. And on that note, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What aspects of this development strategy stood out to you? What do you think are the biggest opportunities and challenges facing Bangladesh? Yeah, share your thoughts. This is a conversation that goes beyond just us. Exactly. So until next time, keep those brains buzzing. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of development strategies.
Assalamu alaikum. I am actually talking to someone. I did salam to, I think this is Dublin Snob. Hi, how are you? So you've listened to the audio podcast, Bangladesh a case study. And yes, Bangladesh, like many other countries, has its challenges, such as Ethiopia, for example. Now, in any country, the foundation, of course, education is important, and then infrastructure first, and then education. And resources, as for resources, there is resources. I think there's a lot of gas and coal. But then you do have the dilemma now, especially, climate crisis. The dilemma is, do you want to get all that gas and coal out, fossil fuel, which will add carbon dioxide and methane gas to the atmosphere? And, it's difficult, yes. Dublin Snob, only hope for Bangla people is to get out of Bangladesh. Where they're gonna go? And and I think, but don't forget, for the past past 53 years, or since Bangladesh was independent, corruption is a big issue. Corruption is a big issue in Bangladesh, and sadly, but I would say, I mean, which country doesn't have corruption? I mean, most countries do, but I mean, for example, look at Singapore. It's not that old. I mean, I think Singapore was independent in 1965 or 66, if I'm not mistaken, and then Bangladesh 1971, and look at Singapore. So it's up to the leaders of Bangladesh right now. So you have Dr. Yunus, which I did say that Dr. Yunus is old. He should retire. I mean, he is the chief advisor, I mean, to the interim government. I mean, it's really what do you call, corruption is the key need to be tackled, and I think foreign direct investment, stability. You want political stability. That's really important, or else, of course, foreign investment will not be. I mean, they will not want to go and invest in Bangladesh. So, of course, that's it for today. Thank you for your comments. Thank you very much for listening. It's okay.